intro.
Polar Educators International is connecting educators, polar researchers, and communities for a better understanding of polar knowledge. Earth's polar regions are remote, beautiful, and challenging places, and they have a profound influence on every one of us. We know these vast amounts of snow, forming ice sheets, sea ice, and glaciers, together with massive currents of cold water, contribute dramatically to the climate and ecosystems of our world, systems which in turn drive the health of our local environments and communities. Research shows dramatic change in the Antarctic, in our mountainous regions, and particularly in the Arctic, home to over 4 million people, which is changing faster than anywhere else on Earth. Scientists are confirming that human activity is playing a significant role in these systems, increasing the planet's surface temperature in ways that cannot be balanced out by natural processes. It is clear the urgency to engage the next generation in polar research and to rise to the challenges that a changing climate will bring has never been greater. United in our passion for sharing the importance and value of the polar regions, educators and researchers from around the world have formed PEI, an essential global network developing polar knowledge to engage a global audience facing climate change. We are collaborating to strengthen this community, building resources and relationships, and helping local audiences connect polar research to their everyday lives. Polar Educators International amplifies the voices of all those dedicated to understanding and protecting our extraordinary polar regions, and all Earth's inhabitants, for generations to come. Join us.
This event today is leading up to our conference in Iceland in April of 2022. I'm going to quickly move forward through these slides and then start on our first presentation. If you want to join the conversation beyond these 24 hours in the Zoom sessions, you can join our Slack channel at bit.ly/PEI/Slack. And continue this conversation. I am the president of Polar Educators International, and I reside in the Sonoran Desert in Arizona, and it is finally dark here today. Our coordinators that put on this wonderful event, Pia Casarini, Joanna Hubbard, and Betty Tremolo. I believe Pia is gone to get some rest, and Joanna will be joining when I am done today, and Betty is off to rest for a bit. There they are. And Ram and Sophie led the way earlier this morning, so you'll see Sophie again at the end here. Let's move forward and start our presentations for today. So we'll start with Jefferson's. Professor Jefferson Simoes, I'm sorry I'm pronouncing this wrong, is from the Federal University in Brazil.
Hi everyone, I'm Jefferson Simoes, a professor of polar geography and glaciology at the Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul, in the southmost state of Brazil. Presently, I'm also one of the vice president of the Scientific Committee on Antarctic Research, the SCAR. I thank you, PEI, for the invitation to talk a little bit on education, science diplomacy, and of course, the role of SCAR, how we can help you, the ECRs, As a professor of polar geography, my challenge is to teach about polar and subpolar environments, give a comprehensive view of physical, chemical, biological characteristics and interactions with the rest of the planet for those who will teach geography to middle and high school students. These include a wide range of topics needed for my students to understand the human presence in the polar regions, the geological responses to interactions with the global systems, the legal mechanism of environment protection in Antarctica and the Arctic, the issue of native peoples, the economic exploitation and sovereignty or territorial claims. But the main challenge is to overcome the myth about the polar regions, especially in a country that believes itself to be tropical and not strongly affected by processes occurring in the polar regions. A professor on the polar areas must undoubtedly deal with common myths, such as the issue of Arctic ethnicities. For example, persists among lay people the idea of just one ethnicity, the Inuits, of the homogeneously cold place, still distant and isolated from the rest of the world, of a 6-month polar night, and of course, the customary confusion about the polar fauna. For them, it's a place that doesn't affect our daily lives. But I believe that what is lacking is even more basic. It's the use of a globe in the classroom, of a primary education that teaches the spatial scale of the planet, of distance, of spatial interrelationships. At schools, I always remember that my country is the 7th closest country to the 9% of the planetary ice masses, not Russia or Canada. That our climate is constantly affected by the atmospheric and oceanic processes of the Southern Ocean, and that I live in the extreme south of Brazil and closer to Antarctica than the north of my country. So, when I talk about environment process and changes to my university students, I have to insist on the subject of spatial scale, exploring connections between the polar regions and the tropics. At the moment, we have, for example, in the palm of our hands, technologies like Google Earth. However, few students still explore the potential and beauty of the Earth and how the environment system is unique and indivisible. Or even hundreds of years to respond to interference by the human in the environment. In a complex nexus. These ideas are essential when talking about the impact of human activity in the polar environment, which, as we know, can leave traces for centuries into the future. We live in a period of rapid change, where the role of different professions is continually questioned, either due to the simple ignorance or misinformation. This is often deliberated by governments and political economic pressure groups. The naive idea of the 19th century that the scientists carry out his or her research outside the everyday life of a mere mortal in a selfless way is long gone. We are increasingly being asked to account for what we do, how we do, and what goals we have. So it is increasingly important for us to be fully involved in science dissemination, in outreach activities, and for a more integrated professional performance with different parts of society, from politics to management, from environment protection to support native peoples in the polar regions. Teaching on polar regions in school is essential to form opinion makers who will support us and, of course, maintain funding for our research in the future. What about science diplomacy? One of the areas that we, as polar scientists, can contribute effectively is science diplomacy. Science diplomacy, or scientific diplomacy, is the use of scientific collaborations between nations to solve common problems and build constructive international partnerships, essential for a global knowledge-based society, subjected to rapid changes due to the scientific and technological development, and due to the impact of global environment changes. Specifically, science will be increasingly needed for polar regions to help solve political problems caused by changing environment issues. An example is the disappearance of the Arctic sea ice in summers in the coming decades, and the rush to the region for new transport routes and exploration of oil and gas resources. In Antarctica, the issue of bioprospecting is an example, which already causes stress in the Antarctic Treaty system. Indeed, the creators of the Antarctic Treaty in late 1950s could not envisage this new problem. To call attention that is the quality of the science carried out in Antarctica that determines the status of a country in the Antarctic Treaty system, and not our simple presence in the region. In other words, Antarctic science is a political instrument. If, on the one hand, we contribute to the qualification of the discussions, in short, by giving science a central role in actions in the region, the Antarctic Treaty was a pioneer in the use of diplomacy of science, and the Scientific Committee on Antarctic Research as the lead. In short, by giving science a central role in actions in the region, the Antarctic Treaty was a pioneer in the use of diplomacy of science. And the Scientific Committee on Antarctic Research, as the leading scientific advisory institution, has an essential role. Finally, I'd like to remind you that one of the functions of SCAR is to support early career researchers. This is done by different ways. Small grants, mainly researchers for underrepresented countries and developing countries, to participate in the SCAR Open Science Conference and Disciplinary Symposia. Our idea is to have more and more ECRs in these meetings, which will be facilitated by a new reality where virtual meetings or hybrid ones will be the norm. We also have a fellowship program for CRs to enable you to join a project team from another country. And the SCAR website has also a specific education resource page. Just visit our homepage, scar.org. Thank you, everyone. Hope to see you soon in one of your scientific meetings.
All right, we'll move on to the next video when he was talking in there about ECRs, early career researchers. So that was an acronym that he mentioned. And then scar.org is the place that he said that could get some more information. Let's go back to next video. I'm going to go ahead and play the one from the, let's see here, it is from the National Institute of Polar Research in Japan, since I think we have somebody from Japan with us today.
Let's get to know about the Arctic and the Arctic Challenge for Sustainability too. We are ARCS2 Education and Outreach Team at National Institute of Polar Research in Japan. The Arctic Challenge for Sustainability 2, ARCS2, is a national flagship project for Arctic research in Japan. This project holds a team exclusively working on outreach activities to make more people get interested in the Arctic and global environment. This is us, ARCS2 Education and Outreach Team. In this presentation, we will introduce two educational materials, Secrets of the Arctic and Activity Map of the ARCS2 project. We hope you'll enjoy it. Secrets of the Arctic. Welcome to Secret of the Arctic. In this book, Paul, a little polar bear, introduces many things about the Arctic, where he lives. You will learn a lot about the Arctic as his friends, illustrated so cute, are talking in this book. Where is the Arctic? Actually, it may be a difficult question to answer. He explains that the North Pole is on the sea ice in the Arctic Ocean and that there are many different ideas about the extent of the Arctic. The column tells us that the biggest difference between the Arctic and Antarctic is that the Arctic is the region where people live their lives. The polar bear is the most famous animal in the Arctic, but many other animals live there. A little seal tells us that the water coming from the land enriches the Arctic Ocean. In the column, you will learn that there once was a bird called penguin in the Arctic. When people hear the word Arctic, they often imagine sea ice that covers the ocean, but the largest area in the Arctic is tundra, where many beautiful flowers bloom in summer. Not only children, but adults will find it interesting that we can see so many flowers in the Arctic. This chapter tells us that long before explorers reached to the North Pole, indigenous peoples such as Inuit and Sami have lived in the harsh environment of the Arctic for centuries. The column introduces indigenous legend about the Northern Lights. Paul and his mother are talking about that the Arctic sea ice is melting and the area covered by sea ice in summer is getting smaller and smaller. The satellite image on the same page shows the difference of the past and present sea ice extent. You can also learn about the Arctic Sea Route that can be used when the area of sea ice gets small in summer. Climate change in the Arctic is a crisis for the whole world. What is going on in the Arctic and what is necessary to solve the problems? As you see in the illustration, scientists from all over the world are working together to deal with this situation through various researches in the Arctic. Paul is talking with an Arctic researcher from Japan. Paul is interested in Arctic research because he heard that if the research is advanced, it might be possible to save the Arctic where Paul and his friends live. He learned that Japan has been conducting atmospheric observations in the Arctic for many years and that these observations are contributing to weather prediction across Japan. The ice sheet in Greenland is made up of snow that accumulated tens of thousands of years ago, so we can get clues to know how the climate was in the past and how it has changed by deeply drilling the ice sheet to get ice cores. It can be used to study global warming at present. Biologging, a way to record behaviors of living things by putting a camera or a GPS device on them, is revealing many mysteries of wildlife. Using this method, the study found that Greenland sharks swim only as slowly as a human baby crawling, but they eat seals. The upper atmosphere at altitude of 60 kilometers to 1,000 kilometers above the ground has great influence on the global atmospheric circulation and climate change. The ESCAT radars, which observe the upper atmosphere, are operating on Svalbard in the Arctic. Global warming and climate change have impact not only on humans but many things. Scientists are working on studies to understand what change occurs in ecosystems as glaciers melt and the plants grow on the Arctic land and how much phytoplankton is changing in the ocean. At the bottom of the Arctic Ocean, they found a seafloor mountain range called the Gakyo Ridge, where hot water is gushing out. Observations have been started to study the interior of the Earth with unmanned submarine vehicles. On land, studies to predict how the ice sheet would melt in the future are in progress by looking into the changes of the geography in Greenland. The Arctic is where the impact of global warming is most evident. Some predict that sea ice will be almost completely gone in summer from the Arctic Ocean by 2040. For the future of the Earth and the whole world, researchers in Japan and around the world are working on the Arctic research. As you see, Secret of the Arctic is a booklet that introduces information about the Arctic and Arctic research in a friendly way, aiming to make both children and adults interested in the Arctic and its environmental change. Activity map of ARCS-2 project towards the new horizon of Arctic research. This activity map of ARCS-2 illustrates the current environment in the Arctic region and key elements of ARCS-2. The Arctic region is where the impact of global warming is most evident. The rapid changes in the natural environment of the Arctic region are beginning to affect the global environment and human society. Thus, it is very important for all of us to understand what is going on in the Arctic region. The ARCS-2 project aims to foster the realization of a sustainable society not only through research activities of the natural sciences, engineering, humanities, and social sciences, but also through interdisciplinary cooperation, working with stakeholders, and international collaborations. The key elements of ARCS-2 include 4 strategic goals and 2 priority subjects and research infrastructures. These icons show which element is related to which item on the map. We hope you will be interested in the Arctic and the ARCS-2 project.
All right, there was some nice resources in that one, and I am going to put them in our Slack channel, and I'm including the link to get to our Slack channel here, and I will see if I can add them to the chat in a little bit. Let me move to the last video for today, for this hour, and this is from Silvia Dotta. She has been with Polar Educators for quite a while, and she was on the council for a while, and she's an educator in Brazil.
Hi, everyone. My name is Silvia Dotta, and I am speaking from Brazil. I am a professor at the Federal University of ABC in Santo André, São Paulo. Today, I will talk to you about InterAntar, a science dissemination program that I coordinate in Brazil. The InterAntar program has different projects that aim to bring Antarctic sciences to many audiences. For example, Antarctica or Antártida, a distance learning course, a video channel on YouTube and TikTok, a fan page on Facebook, a profile on Instagram, another course called Polarcasters, some video games like Expedição Antártica, two podcasts, Antarcticando and Polarcast, and the Antarctic accreditation stamp. As you can see in this slide, that is our timeline. We started with outreach actions in 2014. To develop all these projects, we created a significant research networking involving Brazilian teachers and scientists. Some countries also collaborated with us, such as Portugal, Chile, Argentina, United States, New Zealand, etc. The Antarctica or Antártida audience is teachers, and the course intended to train them to introduce Antarctic sciences in schools. The course is project-based pedagogy, and all activities deal teachers to think about how to engage their students in the scientific literacy process. The polar projects are the main activity of the course. After applying the projects, teachers have to communicate in their social media what and how they bring Antarctica to their classroom. Another course that we offer is called Polarcasters. In this course, teachers learn how to mediate their students' learning through video production. After being certified by the course, teachers introduce the same methodology in their classroom. So the students engage in a video produce and research process. That means they learn about Antarctica during the process of making videos. One of the problems in the Brazilian education system is that Antarctica is not a subject in the official curriculum. As a consequence, didactical material is absent in the Portuguese language. So, we decided to create a range of different materials, such as texts, images, games, videos, etc. We have produced more than 80 scientific videos showing how scientists work on the white continent. Many of these
vivem nos
videos
oceanos ou
are
dependem dos oceanos em pelo menos
translated
uma fase de
into
sua vida,
Spanish
principalmente a
and English,
alimentação. O que mais
language
delimita a
and
distribuição
Brazilian
desses
Sign
mamíferos marinhos
language.
no Oceano Austral
Those videos
são
can be
dois
watched
fatores
on
principais.
Antarctica or
Primeiro, que o Oceano Austral
Antártida
é um oceano
YouTube
que
channel.
circunda o continente antártico. E nós consideramos o Oceano Austral desde a área do continente até mais ou menos uma latitude de 60 graus. Todo esse oceano que circunda a região antártica nós chamamos também de convergência.
When the COVID panic,
Porque hay dos
when the
clases,
COVID
dos,
pandemic came,
solo,
we changed the
hay dos
video
turmas,
production project
¿cómo es
to
la
a live
organización de la
program.
escuela?
Every
Bueno,
week,
la
we
organización de la
interview
escuela,
someone
yo te iba a contar
connected
la
to
aventura
Antarctica.
de cómo
A
llegar a la
researcher, a
Antártida y después
journalist,
te iba a
a
contar, ahora vamos
teacher,
para
a
atrás.
policymaker,
muy bien.
and so on.
Bueno, entonces, hay dos turnos porque es jornada completa. ¿Qué significa jornada completa?
We also bring our
Aqui mais uma vez a
scientific
estação.
station online,
Está lá
showing
o
to
fundo do
our
bloco
public
técnico
how
e
everything
aqui o bloco
works
leste.
em
Então,
Estação
o bloco
Antártica, Comandante
Eu vou caminhar
Ferraz.
aqui agora por debaixo e vou entrar na estação de tratamento de água.
We also work producing software, apps, video games to bring Antarctica to the public. Let's see an example, the Antarctic Expedition game. So, at the beginning of 2020, we promoted the first InterAntar meeting. We could gather 16 lectures and more than 1,600 participants. The event took place on February 16th. On that day, in 1982, Brazil started our scientific Antarctic program and has started as well building our station. Also, in 2021, this year, we released Polarcast and Antarcticando, the first podcasts about Antarctica in the Portuguese language. Finally, in order to connect all those projects and keep our public engaged on Antarctic subject, thinking, asking, and looking for a way to build an Antarctic mindset, we implemented the Antarctic accreditation stamp, in Portuguese, Selo Antártico, to certificate schools that bring Antarctica to their classroom. As a result, we made more than 200 videos, more than 50 lives, 600 teachers trained, 600 polar projects, 150 polarcasters trained, more than 4,000 followers, and more than 20,000 students engaged in our outreach actions. So, what do we plan for the future? Create more outreach actions, connected more and more people, institutions, and countries, and collaborate to building and Antarctic mindsets in Brazil. Thank you for listening to me. Follow us on social media and let me know what are you doing to reduce the impacts of climate change.
So I'm going to open it up if there's any questions. I think Hiroyuki, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I think you're the only one that's on live right now. And if you had any questions, we can open it up and we can share it out at the Slack later. Let me go ahead and escape full screen here. That was some amazing work that Silvia was doing in Brazil to train teachers and get Antarctica into the curriculum for all the youth across Brazil, especially when we heard from the speaker at the top of the hour about how they are so close to Antarctica, and a lot of some of their weather, depending on where you are in Brazil, is driven by what's going on in the Southern Ocean. That resource we had from the first presentation today is now in our Slack channel, and that was a very nice resource put together out of Japan, and beautiful graphics in there, lots of great information. And one of the questions we have out on the Slack channel right now is, what kind of books do you use to teach? And this is another great resource for teaching about the Arctic. So feel free to share that and use that in your education. With that said, I am going to go ahead and get ready for our next presentation. That's starting at 0300 hours UTC. Let me go to here.